So right-handed, you're right-handed as well, right? So what you're concerned with is when you shift here.
Exactly. When I
Now
shift-
you feel like you've moved where I can throw straight into you,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So now if I move here, it feels like you can throw straight down my center.
Yes and no, not really, because that shield might be open, but I still feel like I am threatening you, but not as much.
That's correct. What I do when I'm typically going to a sword side is my threat, and again, it changes depending on the opponent, but the most common one, because it's their weapon is what's most important, is when I cut to that weapon side, it's often at that arm. So if I went here last time, my next time is likely here. So I'm pushing up into this quadrant, in this case specifically at his arm. Because if he decides he wants a shot, he's got nothing out here because I'm too far this way for him. So he doesn't really have strong shots on this side. He can cross shot me, but cross shooting is always risky. And if I'm pointing at his weapon, it becomes even more so. So what feels like the shot here? What for you?
A leg, possible
Yeah,
leg.
so if you-
Arm if I can.
Yeah, well, this one's my shield.
Oh, okay,
Right,
so.
so this is my sword.
Yes, okay, so, yeah, leg.
Yeah, and if I'm facing his arm, he's got a big price here, okay? And again, remember, we're moving. So when he throws this leg shot, which is his, in this exercise, it has been move for position, move for position, move for position, move for position. In this case, it's move for attack. He's decided he's going to end, he's going to initiate, he's going to finish his shot, finish his fight. And in this case, it's going to be a leg shot. Now, when he does it, I'm going to respond. My attack has been here. My response is going to be this. So I've slid out of his range for my leg, but well within arm range, and I was already aiming at it. And that's what this was for. Bang. Now, if he sees this and he pulls back and blocks, that's okay. I didn't risk anything. And he now knows if he tries the cross shot, I'm on his arm. Okay? It is very, remember I talked about how controlling this weapon was important. Okay? That's a huge part of your defense. What's that weapon doing? Are you controlling it? And this is one of the ways to do it. So while I'm out here looking for shots, when I feel him, like he starts to get comfortable, I cut hard on this side. So this side that feels uncomfortable, this is a defensive move for me. I cut hard over here because it looks like bang, I actually pull his arm back. Okay, and now think of it as an oval. So now I'm moving, he gets ready to throw at me.
Okay, you just took that step out on the way.
I cut over to his arm. If he had fired, I could still, even with this motion, still get on it. Now, in this case, this is great because what he's felt me threaten his arm back and chose to close. But now he's out of stance. His arm is back because I had a threat on it.
No, that's kind of how I hold it.
Is it? Okay.
Yes, sir. Duke Thorin, he says,
Okay.
put your arm back like this. So.
Then I stand correct. So now he's maintained his stance and closed with me. So now we're back to right where we were before. He made a move that was going to be an attack. I made a move that shut it down. He aborted it, turns it into a move. So now we're back to that again. We're doing it in pieces. This isn't a turn-based system. And that's not how it's done in real life. But can you see how it starts to flow?
You basically just alluded to something. You said you cut hard, which makes him pull his arm back.
Mhm.
So you're kind of using that thing or that body motion and the speed of it and the impulse of it as a way to take initiative in the fight.
Yes, yeah. So now what we're talking about, that's perfect. So now what we're talking about is energy. Okay? How much energy is going into the fight. So when you have a fighter who's just walking around, you don't feel as much from them. Or you get one who's like, there's a lot of energy, right? And you pick up on those. So when that guy's moving, you're like right on the edge of it. When the guy's flowing, you got to stay more relaxed because he might snap something fast. Okay, right? Now you get somebody who does both. So you have someone who floats and then cuts hard and then okay, what are those attacks?
Forcing me to try to
Yeah.
block and throw at this.
Yeah. So when I do it slow, because of his skill, he's reading me, he's like, well, I'm not gonna do that, I'm gonna float here. Yeah, that's right, because we're moving at half speed and consistent. But when I bring the energy up, when I keep the energy down, rather, in his case, because he reads fairly well, with him, what I'll do is I'll keep the energy lower, bring it up, down, then burst it and drop it away. So he feels that, and then his instinct says, this is the moment. And I get a response from him, like, good, there's my response. So now I know I can trigger it. So then I can build on it. Trigger. So an energetic guy, I will often do the opposite. I'll just agitate, and they're like, yeah. Now they're like, they're not thinking at all. They're just like, woo. They're not making any plans. Now I can relax and go where they want.
So that shifting of the speed of your motion and whether it's even pace or sort of syncopated, that's also part of your feint, isn't it?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. And I don't like to use the word feint. I get what you're saying.
Yes.
I totally do.
Yeah.
Because it's false information.
Yes.
I don't want people stuck in the mindset that feints and shots are separate. They're not. I think of feints, literally, I think of feints as shots that I just don't throw. Otherwise, they get read as feints. So.
Question?
Chris, I guess, I think of it in a similar way as much of it is just, how am I going to lie to my mom?
Yeah.
I want you to believe this story.
Yep.
And once you believe that story, then you will tell me how to kill you.
Yes. When His Excellency Sir Yakos was my squire, that's what he always says, my knight is the best liar. And that's what it's about. You want to give false information so then I respond. This goes back to my card analogy. You have a set of cards with techniques, not tactics, but techniques. To know the tactic, you need to know what card they play. So what card can you play? What card do they play, rather, when you play a particular card? So you put that card out there convincingly, and they play a card on it, and you say, well, I wasn't really playing the card, I just want to see what you play. Put it back in your hand. If they play something, you have a card that beats, great. If they don't, all right, try something else. Maybe this card makes them give up that card, then I can use the other card. Okay. Has anybody seen the heroic from a few years ago that I fought Kenrick? Okay. That everybody oohs and ahs because I do this shot where I go on the way past him, I hit him. Everybody's like, ooh. Kenrick's a hell of a fighter. He's also left-handed. That was not an easy shot. The first part of that fight is, I don't know, 8, 10 minutes, something like that. I took that long to figure out I could place that shot. So yeah, if you look at just that one shot, it looks like magic. It's not magic. It took me for freaking ever to figure that out. I had to test and probe. I needed to know how fast he threw, what made him throw, what would keep him from throwing while I was testing, how did he move his shield, how much. My first thoughts were because he had a long pointed shield, so it would sit, the kite shield would sit close to his leg. One side would be open, so I threatened the leg, but he moves the shield like 3 inches. Threatened the outsides, 3 inches. So I knew I couldn't bait one or the other without getting the sword coming. So I did this whole build thing where I realized I had to figure out what changes in his stance when he's ready to throw, what makes him pull his shield which direction. In this case, it was when he was ready to throw, he was more likely to pull it back on his shield side. And if I gave the right energy, he would throw a rising, where he would literally come up on his toes and throw a deep wrap up over me here to clear my shield, because I'm left-handed as well. I had to figure all those things out. So when I finally executed them, I had to have that plan and then poke enough, and finally to the point where he decided he was ready to attack. And once I felt that, I pushed, I stepped forward, I stepped down here to the side because this would pull the shield down. The forward motion would get him to commit because he knows I'm locked. My shield's up, that meant the high shot. Once I knew it was the high shot, I stepped sideways and low and fired down, and his shot went over my head and between his legs. It's cool, but it wasn't free. And even on top of all that, I leg him and I step out. I was disappointed because it was supposed to be a body shot. As good, he was so good that when I stepped by and this missed, he knew it and he pulled away. So I couldn't catch his body. I had to, in the middle of this, I had to push it down lower to pick up the leg, or it would have slapped his body and been useless. So even in the middle of that, he still picked it up.
I find a lot of inexperienced fighters are impatient. They aren't willing to wait that long to find out what's going to work and what's not.
Exactly, because they don't know how to get the information. So that's what this comes down to, is if you should feel pretty sure about the shot. If you don't let it bother you. Don't get anxious about it. All that anxiety means is you don't have all the information yet. So get more information. Prod some areas, throw the energy, threaten an area, tag an area, and see what happens.
As you were giving the example in the fight of Henrik, one of the things that you just described that is really unique for me is that he moved his shield only maybe 2 to 3 inches, one or the other. Do you find that the information you get based on the skill level of the fighter is like actually just minute little tweaks when you like react, or is that different in Rattan's side?
Do you mean, do better fighters in Rattan typically move smaller?
Yeah, like they'll only give you like a little tweak
Yes.
in response.
A good fighter will give much less
Information.
movement. Yes, absolutely. That's why in this case, the motion he did for his leg was enough that it protected both his sides. Because if I threatened one and went the other way, he would have just done this.
Because they have the point.
Because literally, it's up here, it's no more than this with his pinky.
Yeah.
That's all he has to do to protect both sides of his leg, if his timing's good, and it was. What I needed was, what makes him do this?
Yeah.
Now, he can't protect the inside, and if he thinks this is outside, he's gonna leave it here,
Right.
right? So this hard threat is what made him leave it there. The close is what made him confirm that this was gonna be a good shot. And once I knew this was where he was going, this was my safe spot. The shield was this way, the sword was this way. I went that way.
Bishop to D5, check.
Right. Yeah, but it wasn't free. You talk about the newer fighter, that's why, as a better fighter, when I step in the list, I have to be prepared for them to just jump me. That's my first plan, virtually every time, is they're gonna jump me, and how am I gonna respond to that? And typically, I have 2 or 3 things I'll do in there. One is a shift in movement if I need to buy distance. Part of that shift is to get their forward momentum to go in a direction that I can control. And the third is stepping out of that direction because now it's safe, right? Because that's the only direction they're going. So when you think about position, we couldn't really practice this at the rate we were going. But when you think about position, all that matters is where you are in relation to each other at any given point. That's why I was focusing on this distance and angle thing. That's really what it's about. Whether we are running around the field with one guy with a mace and shield and the other guy with a 7-foot pole arm, or we've got 2 people standing who are legged doing it. It's the same thing. Where are you in relation to your opponent at that given time? We can run all over the place, but where we are in relation to each other is all that matters. Now, the moving changes how you do that, but that's what's important. So don't get caught up in these other things. And that's what happens with movement. That's what he's talking about, is you get somebody who rushes forward, they have sacrificed the ability to go backwards. They're essentially put themselves on the ropes without having hang ropes. Okay? The faster you go, the less direction you can change, and it becomes, this is the area I move in. Okay? That's why I like this, because this allows me to move very well laterally and forward and back some. What I sacrifice in this is the explosive distance, like a rapier fighter can cover. From this stance, a rapier fighter can burst 6 feet. And if he's got a good reach, he could probably cover up to 9 feet just with a... Watch Olympic fencers. The distance that they will cover in a lunge is insane. I can't do that from here. But if somebody lunges on me, I can do this. Right? So it doesn't matter anymore.
Great sword play. There's people pick it up even in tourney fields here. So you're sword out, close. That's how you combat that. Yours is stand there and get picked at B range. How do you?
How do I deal with that?
You change it. You change. Right. It's obviously you fight different styles, but I remember with my great sword, this is it, man.
Yeah.
You're
So-
here, that's where you're at.
The thing that dictates my range is my back foot, which is also part of the reason I like it up here. This, I don't like because this happens a lot, like you said, in the newer fighters. They'll do this to get closer. And that's what happens, right?
Right,
He just steps
that.
back. Because that's the danger, whether people know it or not. That's the one that's dictating
Oh,
my
yeah,
range.
that's how far you can
It's not
go.
this one.
No.
So this is as far as I can go, but I did it ahead of time.
Right.
So I do a couple of things. One is a lot of what we already talked about. So we face each other. No, we don't. He faces me. I slide off line. Right.
Good. Just
So-
enough, I'm in the body, not the
Exactly. So now your body's a little off,
Right.
right? The other thing I do is, this is one of the things I start to change some of the rules within this case. I like this A-frame, but the reason for this is so I can shut this down and be able to fire quickly. But from here, if he's got a glaive, firing quickly is moot. I can't reach him from here in A-frame. So using the sword for offense at this beginning isn't an advantage. So this is where a rule breaks. So what I do is I shift my shield far forward and my sword forward like this. So I create a wedge. Now my center is much more shut down. My sides are shut down because this stays here. And what I find important is, again, where's the angles? So I not only have I moved offline, but I typically point my weapons ever so slightly to one side of their hand. I often look through my basket with the bar basket. So I'll often look through it. Yeah, that's really old too. It's older than one of my men-at-arms. If you don't have an open one, still looking past is fine, but always to one side. If I try to get in the middle and try to pick up both, a good glaveman will just pop. Great weapons are not for strength. A strong guy with a big weapon can be dangerous, but it's also really predictable. The ones I worry about are the ones who are quick with it. That doesn't mean a big guy can't be quick. Certainly can. In fact, the good ones, that's what they are. So if I'm out here and straight up, a good glademan can drop this shot or this shot, which is only a 4-inch difference. I don't know which one it is. If I push slightly over, so his weapon's a little outside, he wants this side, which I know is coming, or he has to go farther, and I can make a small correction.
Movement is another tile, and it's a different fight.
Exactly. Now he's moved. Now I'm getting information from him. Can you see it? So when I threaten this area, where is he moving? The second thing I do is this foot comes underneath, and I make a shift in my stance that's a little more hip forward. So what I'm looking for is keeping this back foot. That's my range. So instead of fighting here, as I move, I shift like this.
Close range without moving your target in.
Weekend
Okay.
birdies.
Not a great stance, but it has a different purpose. So now we go back to the pie, right? He's got me in front. The length of his pie is his weapon, which is somewhere out here. So if my weapons cut the upper part and I sit, I'm a smaller target, and I tuck my hips under, what I'm looking at is not so much my hips as back foot. So now I'm actually closer. If I keep my center, I'm almost a 1.5 foot closer. So now when I shift my hip, I can actually one-shot a polearm guy.
So you're using your shoulder placement to lie about your range?
I'm using,
Yeah, the line of your
kind
shoulders?
of, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pulling this in. This is what he sees, and I want this pointing up around his head and shoulders where he feels it, and then as I move, I can tuck these under, and then when I throw, often, that's when I come up to my stand. If I close, it often goes bang. Now I'm in my stance. Now I'm at A, B range. My preferred is around B. I don't like A range with a polearm fighter, because a good one,
Get you out of here.
even worse, they'll just butt spike you right in the chest. Because they walk right into it.
So this being told, these guys are probably wondering why I'm even asking this question. I don't like full weapon at all, ever. He does, and I was asking, because he was asking me when during the drill, well, and
What happens when I do
quite
the pole?
frankly, I'm like this on a pull weapon. As soon as you touch my sword, I'm taking steps in.
Yeah, see, so he's doing it very differently, but what he's doing is he's saying, my sword's important, but out here, It's useless,
I can't
so
use
I'm
it
gonna make
anyway.
it part of my defense.
Boom.
So
Right.
mine is a little similar in that I like everything in tight.
Right.
So what he's doing is as something makes contact, he's controlling it as he allows himself to slide into his range. I'm doing that from here. Bang, or
Yeah, sure.
but again, I like to burst in to about here.
Right.
Because right here, the polearm guys will tell you, it's difficult to throw a blade shot, and it's also difficult to throw a butt spike. This is a horrible place for them. You know, I'm sure they love when they walk by a group and somebody's like, well, the way to do it is you get in really tight. And they're like, yeah, you do that. Because then they don't even have to effort the thrust or the butt spike. You close and they just turn. You run right into it. And that's the end. Okay? So, talking about that, the same stuff I talked about, the zones, threatening areas, all that applies to a long weapon. So I'm not a great glade fighter, but I've beaten some pretty good ones because of this. Because I don't fight them. I don't let them use their stuff. They've got great technique, great timing. One of them is great with the most common thing, which is when somebody commits, you change your angle, you fire a shot that not only blocks their shot, but is an attack, right? Because you got one thing, you use it for both. Except, if I'm the one who makes them do this, this is where they are. And they've already done their attack and defense. So, it's the same thing. It's not a weakness with blades. It's any weapon style has a thing.
Grace, you talked about fighting people who are lower level than you, but I'm often fighting people at a higher level. I've been a knight for 16 years, and still aspiring.
You need to get more students. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Anyhow, it seems like whenever I gain information on somebody, they're also gaining information on me.
Yes.
So there's that trade-off.
Are you typically fighting knights, or are you just talking about when you fight?
When I fight knights and duels.
When you're doing it, are you talking about practice or tournament? Because tournament's different. Tournament, they're trying to win. They're just not going to go easy on you, and it's not what you want anyway, right? Oh, you beat certain folks. Yeah, it would be nice. You know, I've had a few people, one in particular, they keep telling the jokes that makes fun of them. There were a couple nights that came to our group, and one fought me. He's like, you know what? I did well. I actually got a couple shots on Ragnvaldr, and I had some angles I don't have. It was really awesome. And his buddies in the car were like, hee, and he let him talk, and he's like, what? He was fighting right-handed. He's like,
I do it
so
in
I
practice.
get it.
It's
Practice is different.
Yeah.
So in tournament, you're going to be testing yourself. In practice, even if you guys just spar in practice, remember practice is practice. So change the parameters on a fight to optimize what the thing is you're working on. For those of us who are fighting higher level to lower level, my suggestion is not to take things out of your fight, but to create other limitations. I get a lot of higher level fighters who are like, well, I'm having difficulty because I tend to typically fight lower level people, so I let them throw for a while. So they go from having a good stance to standing with shield down and sword in front of them. This doesn't help them at all. It really doesn't help your lower fighter either, because when you fight in a tournament, you don't fight them like that, do you? Right? One of the ways I've done it is to see how slow I can throw and still land. So can I still set up a shot and place it? How slow can I go? Another great one is wherever you hit someone, mark it off your mental list. I don't get to hit them there anymore. Because wherever you hit them is likely the easiest place, right? So you mark that off. I hit them there, I hit them there. What it led to for me as an example is you get to a point you're like, how do I take this guy's shield arm? Because that's all that's left. And you know what? You can. I've taken shield arms from knights and things too, like nobody's ever hit me in the shield arm. And again, it's not because I'm great, it's because when I went to practice, I kept setting up these limitations that forced me against a lesser opponent to work at my best, yet still give them a strong fight. Because when you're trying to get somebody's shield arm only, they got lots of opportunity to work on you, right? So those that don't watch getting rid of some of your ability, technique when you work on somebody lower. When you're higher, you do the opposite. Let them know you're working on a thing, picking up information. Also, recognize when you do. If you get the information and you figure it out, and then they adapt, that's a success. Okay? You absolutely succeeded when they did that. You know? So, watch your measuring stick. Well, they just changed, so I'm still getting nowhere. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You absolutely got somewhere. You know, I have to remind people that when they threaten it, and I have to make some kind of quick shift because they did a thing, and every now and then I blind myself. Yep, that's where you had me, right there. So then I fix it, so it doesn't happen anymore, and it's good for me. So there's two ways there. One is to make sure you give yourself credit for what you're actually achieving, and the other is, if it's practice, ask for things to change. You know, maybe slow them down. So does that help?
You said something that really interested me, and I'd like to go back to it. As a small fighter, a lot of my game is trying to tweak measure and tweak distance. And I've done the thing where I cheat my hips in a little bit and then I'll close. But one of the things that you said that was really interesting was how you come to meet your stance, because everything is about keeping a really tight stance.
Yes.
And I found that interesting, how you make that transition. And could you talk about that more?
Make the trend from a cheated stance?
From a cheated stance to meeting your regular stance, like in that transition.
The reason this works is I've gotten the back leg as far forward as I can, but I'm still compressed, and my defense is forward. So the opponent doesn't do a lot. They have to move to get around it. And if we've combined this with what we talked about before as angles, now instead of just facing the opponent, as I've tucked under, I've slid off to one side. It doesn't matter which side. Now, not only am I closer, but they're offline some too. So instead of coming into them, I'm coming up into them from an angle. Whatever's on that side is less of a problem, whether it's a shield or a sword or whatever. Does that make sense with the angle? So then the actual movement of it is, remember when you're sliding on the bench?
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. So you tuck up, so in this case you can imagine the bench is ahead of you, and you move your hips up to sit on the bench, and then you slide forward on the bench. The shot, typically, this comes forward, I push the shot out at long range, but I'm not trying to reach, I'm extending, the back foot comes up off the ground, except instead of recoiling, I keep going with the hip, and I fall into it here. So it's nothing more, my feet do nothing more than this. So my feet are literally doing nothing more than a walking step.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you mentioned, because you kind of then reach back up into your stance, like, upper body wise. I was interested in your upper body transition.
Gotcha. So this is way out because I want this wedge. I want the opponent to have nothing in front and then coming a little offline only faces them into a defense. And by coming to one side or the other, I maximize my control of that.
5 minutes.
Thank you. So then when I push with my upper body, you have to think about stepping into your stance. Bang, bang. This goes back to what I was talking about earlier, where you were setting up, you're purposefully going out of stance to leave a thing. I want to be unconsciously in my stance, so when I come out of it like this is conscious. So when I do an attack, bang, I don't have to think about make sure I'm in my stance, because that's where I go when I don't think, is my stance. That's why it's so important. So when you do these executions, if your timing is a little off, you will accidentally end up in your stance. Okay. So that's why I think about it as stepping into my stance, as opposed to pulling these back. If you think about pulling these back,
into your stance.
right, if you think of pulling them back, now you add the excitement of the fight. This becomes your pull. This is not your stance. This
Right.
gets you killed.
Yeah.
So where your head is makes a difference, and what you did in practice matters. That's why when I'm fighting a lower opponent in practice, I don't like to sacrifice. I'll fight right-handed,
Yeah.
and that's really good. So, does that answer it?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And one comment, actually, I took some beginner belly dance classes to learn the same thing about the bench, because they'll do isolations.
Yes.
And so that's how I learned how to cheat that, but I thought it was another cool tip.
Thanks.
So, thank you.
Other questions? We have a couple more minutes.
I have a question sort of rolling into the short fighter range thing. When you test the edge, if you're testing at somebody who's left closed, and I feel threatened far before they feel threatened. How do you figure out where that is?
Often like the alarm, there's two parts of that answer. The first is, all the shorter fighters look at taller fighters as having an advantage to them. They do, but you have an advantage against them. You cannot forget that. You are a smaller target, and if you stand right, you present very little targets for them. So you're a small target that's only there. And to attack a low opponent, a lot of taller fighters can get caught leaning. So the very advantage they have of trying to reach over takes away theirs, if you do yours right. And that's one thing I'm gonna touch on, technique instead of tactic, and that is, when you throw a shot, ideally, your best shots are 90 degrees off your body. Okay, that's why when I throw a long shot, I wanna push this hip. If I throw up, I disconnect from my hip, so now I'm throwing arm shots. Low shots you can throw down, that works. Sitting and throwing them is even better. But this 90 degrees is ideal. Getting above it gets very quickly weaker and weaker. So the way you compensate is you fight, you face them. So 90 degrees faces up into their shoulders. And what will happen with a taller opponent is your head disappears back behind your shield. Now they can't reach back anymore. And you're threatening right into their head and shoulders. You haven't lost the ability to throw their legs. They're tall. Their legs are right there. You don't have to squat. So now you're more dangerous. So what it feels like, what you feel like is like you're being overwhelmed. What it feels like to them is something with teeth is right in their belly. So remember that when you're little. It's not, oh, he's small, he's got all the advantages. No, he does not. Because when you tuck up underneath, they're like, ooh, that's not good at all. Okay, does that make sense?
It does. So I have more questions, but I can.
Okay. I know we got another class, so if you want to talk about them after that, that's fine.